Hello and welcome to StudyIQ. In this lecture, we will see what are the concerns faced by the steel industry in India. Concerns faced by steel industry in India. Before we move on to the topic, let us quickly have an overview about the steel industry in India. India is the third largest producer of crude steel after China and Japan, and it aims to become the second largest steel producer, bypassing Japan by the year 2030. At present, we are the third largest producers of crude steel. In order to promote the steel production in the country, the government has imposed zero export duty on steel, but the GST on steel is 18%. The major steel plants of the country are located in the states of Orissa, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Karnataka, Chhattisgarh, Tamil Nadu, Vizag and Maharashtra. So these are the important states which need to be noted. Like you should have an idea regarding which all states have the important steel plants in the country. The per capita consumption of steel in our country is merely 68 kg, whereas the global average is 200 kg. So per capita consumption 68 kg, global average 200 kg. So there is a gap. Now what is the issue here? The demand for steel all over the world is growing. So the demand is increasing, but the production is coming down. This will lead to a supply and demand gap. And if India properly utilize all its resources, we can fill this global gap of steel production. So there is an emerging global gap in the steel production because of increased demand on one side and reduced supply on the other side. And if India uses all our resources to its full advantage, we have a fair chance of capturing the global market in the steel production industry. Now let us see what are the major concerns of Indian steel production industry. The first and the most important thing that India should be concerned regarding the steel industry is the reduction in the rate of foreign investments in the steel industry of our country. The first one, reduction in the rate of foreign investments in the steel industry of our country. Let us closely analyze what are the reasons for the reduction of foreign investment in the steel industry. The most important factor which has led to a decrease in the foreign investment is the business environment of our country. The global image of India regarding the business environment has come down. If we take the example of the Vodafone case, a global image was created that India lacks commitments to contracts and laws in India can change anytime. So such kind of similar examples has given a negative image about the business environment of India. Coming to the steel industry, a very good example is the example of POSCO, which had signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of India in the year 2005. An MOU was signed with the government of India. According to the MOU, POSCO agreed to invest $12 billion for a steel plant in Orissa. But it refrained from this process. And later the POSCO agency said that this was because of the unreliable policy environment in the country. So this was because of unreliable policy environment prevailing in India. So this is one major reason why foreign investments, especially in the steel sector, is coming down in our country. Another thing to be noted under the foreign investments is that the FDI in the steel industry is less than the FII. What is the difference between FDI and FII? FDI refers to foreign direct investment. It means that a multinational company has to invest in another country in the form of direct capital, in the form of infrastructure, in the form of assets. It is for long term. So FDI is for long term. an MNC has to make investments in infrastructure of a country which cannot be taken back in a short period of time. It is for a very long time. And coming to FII, foreign institutional investment. Foreign institutional investment means a foreign company will make investments in the share of another country. For example, if a US company is making investments in the shares of an Indian company, it is known as foreign institutional investment. And what is the speciality of this foreign institutional investment? Foreign institutional investments can be taken back anytime. It means that they are highly volatile. So this can be withdrawn anytime. And when we say that the foreign direct investments in the steel sector is less than the foreign institutional investment, what does this mean? It means that foreign companies are not interested to invest in India or Indian steel industry for a long period. And this is because of the business environment of our country. Business environment. So when a foreign company makes investment in foreign institutional investment of a country or shares of a company in India, it means that the company can withdraw it anytime. Because the foreign companies are concerned about the unreliable policy environment in our country, they prefer to make investments in foreign institutional investment or FII, not in FDI. This is an important thing to be noted. So FDI in the steel industry is less than FII. Another thing to be noted here is that currently the India steel capacity is 125 million ton. 125 million ton. The current steel capacity of India. But the target of India is to achieve 300 million ton steel production by the year 2030. In another 12 years, India tries to achieve the target of 300 million ton. This means that 175 million ton of steel production must be increased or added. 175 million ton steel production must be added to the current level. And if this target has to be achieved by 2030, around 13 million ton of steel production must be added annually. So per year 13 million ton of steel production must be added to the present capacity. Only then we will be able to achieve the target of 300 million ton by 2030. For producing 1 million ton of steel, around 60 billion investment is required. And in order to produce 175 million ton of steel, we require an investment of around 780 billion. Now the question is, can India itself invest 780 billion for steel production in the country? No, for a developing country like India, it is impossible to invest 780 billion in steel industry alone. So what is the solution? The only solution left out is to attract foreign investment in the steel industry of our country. Solution is foreign investment. And we said that foreign investment is coming down because of our business environment. We also have Make in India initiative. So Make in India initiative also targets steel production within the country or domestic production of steel. So this also will require the help of foreign investment if we have to achieve the targets of Make in India also. So foreign investment is one thing that we cannot forego. So a decrease in the rate of foreign investment is a very serious cause of concern for the steel production industry in the country. Another important cause of concern for the steel industry in our country is the increased cost of production of steel. An increase in cost of production of the steel. And this increase in cost of production of the steel is majorly due to two factors. One is a high cost of transportation. And the second one due to lack of technology. Let us see one by one. Taking high cost of transportation. According to certain reports, that the cost of transportation in the steel industry in India is almost 3 times that of global average. And the reason for this is that we depend on railways for steel transportation. There are two problems with railways. One is congestion and the second one is expense. Congestion is related to the problem of overutilization of the capacity of the Indian railways. So congestion is one problem and the second one is expense. The cost of freight expense in the railways is very high. the Indian Railways actually compromises the rate of passengers, that is the passenger fare, with that of freight expenses. That means the passenger fares in Indian Railways is very less, but the freight expenses of Indian Railways are very high, and this has led to increased cost of production in the steel. One reason is cost of transportation, and the second reason, lack of technology. The Indian steel producing companies still use outdated technologies, and if we need an improvement in the technology, a collaboration with the foreign partners is necessary. So we have to adopt international standards and global technology. For that, not only investments but technology from outside the country is also very necessary. And to attract this, the government should adopt business-friendly environment in this country to attract foreign investments and also to bring in foreign technology into this industry. Another cause of concern of the steel industry in India is the over-reliance of coal for steel production. We rely on coal for the production of steel. This will have serious implications on the environment front. Already we are over-exploiting this resource. So in the future, this can add on to the carbon footprints and will have serious implications on the environment, and which needs to be addressed properly. Another cause of concern is that the per capita labor productivity is less. Per capita labor productivity of the Indian steel industries is less. Another cause of concern in the Indian steel industries is that there is a serious issue of underutilization of capacity. Underutilization of capacity. And this has led to an increase in the cost of production of steel. So if the resources are not utilized properly, especially the manpower, it will lead to an increase in the cost of production. And many factors have caused the underutilization of capacity, which includes strikes, labor disputes, improper monitoring mechanism, etc. Another cause of concern, which we have already discussed, is technology or lack of technology in the steel industry of India. So these are the major concerns relating to the steel industry in India. Now let us see what are the government initiatives taken in order to tackle the concerns in the steel industry of India. Government measures. Before going on to the government measures, you must understand that government is the one who has to do the work of a facilitator. So the aim of the government is to facilitate the industry. It means that the government will have to lay down policy guidelines and establish institutional mechanism. Policy guidelines, institutional mechanisms. These policy guidelines and institutional mechanisms are necessary for creating conducive environment which will help in improving the efficiency and the performance of this industry. So government's aim is to provide policies and institutional mechanisms which will promote the growth of this industry by increasing the efficiency and performance of this industry. So now let us see what are the government initiatives. The first one is the National Steel Policy. National Steel Policy 2017. This is an updated version of the National Steel Policy 2005. So already in 2005 we had a National Steel Policy. This is an updated version. National Steel Policy provides a broader roadmap to achieve long-term growth in the steel industry by the year 2030. We have already discussed the target of the government by the year 2030 is to increase the production of steel by 175 million tons. So 175 million tons production will be added by the year 2030. So the National Steel Policy gives broader guidelines for achieving this target by 2030. This National Steel Policy addresses the concerns in both demand and supply side. That means in the beginning we said that the demand for steel in India is very less than the global average demand for steel. So this National Steel Policy not only addresses the issues with the supply side, but it also addresses issues regarding the demand side of the steel. Another initiative from the side of the government was that it has provided for a policy which will give preference to domestic manufacturers of iron and steel. So, the policy of the government to promote domestic manufacturers of iron and steel. This will also boost the India's Make in India initiative. We know that Make in India is a flagship program of the government, and the government is giving so much of importance for Make in India program. So the policy of the government to procure or to give preference to domestically produced steel will give a boost to Make in India program of the government. In the year 1992, the steel industry was decontrolled and delicensed. In the year 1992, decontrolled and delicensed. It means that the government took away its control from the steel industry, and delicensed means abolition of licensing from the steel industry. Also in the year 1992, the price regulation of the steel industry was abolished. Price regulation was abolished. It means that when price regulation is abolished, the market will determine the prices of that particular commodity. So in case of steel, in 1992, when the government abolished the price regulation, it means since then the demand and supply forces in the economy, that is the demand for steel and also the supply of steel. This demand and supply forces decides the price of the steel in the market. So the price is determined by demand and supply forces in the market. Another government initiative was the creation of InterMinisterial Group, IMG, under the Ministry of Steel. And this interministerial group was chaired by the Secretary of the Steel. Chairman, Secretary of Steel. And the aim of this interministerial group was to monitor and coordinate major steel investments in the country. Monitor and coordinate major steel investments in the country. Also, there is no export duty for steel. No export duty. This means that the domestic manufacturers are promoted to produce steel in the country. They can export their commodity or steel with zero export duty. So this was also to increase the production of steel in the country. So these are the major government initiatives in order to increase the production of steel in the country. We have seen the concerns of Indian steel industry. Also we have seen the government initiatives. Now let us see what are the solutions to address these concerns of the Indian steel industry. Solutions. An important solution from the side of the government can be to implement policies and institutional mechanisms which will attract foreign players for long-term investment. So we said that foreign investment is necessary not only in terms of capital but also in terms of technology. So the government must make its policies and institutional setup friendly for the foreign investors to make investments in our country. This is one viable solution for increasing the production of steel in the country. So when foreign investment increases, we will be able to meet our target by 2030 to increase the production of steel and to become the second largest producer of steel in the world. It will also create lots of employment for our country. And while attracting the foreign investment, the government should ensure that the foreign investments are for long term. We said that the foreign direct investments in steel is less than foreign institutional investment. So government should give more focus on FDI, which is long term. So this must be the agenda of the government. Another solution would be to explore new areas for the procurement of raw material. So exploring new areas for raw materials. For example, clean energy sources like the coal gasification. Example is coal gasification. This comes under low cost and also less carbon footprint. It means that the environmental concerns will come down. So the government should take initiative to explore new areas of raw materials which will have a positive impact on cost as well as on the environmental front. Another important thing which we can look into is the utilization of Indian coastlines. Indian coastline accounts for around 7,000 kilometers. And while we discussed the concerns of steel industry in India, we said that one major concern is the cost of transportation. And we are heavily dependent on railways for our steel transportation. So shifting this mode of transportation from railways to coastal ways of transportation or shipping will reduce the cost of transportation, and India is blessed with coastlines, so it is easy for us to shift into transportation through waterways. So the mode of transportation must change. So this is also a very good solution for the present issue of the increased transportation cost of the steel industry. This can eliminate the logistical disadvantage, and this will also bring in a competitive advantage for the industry. Another viable solution would be to transport the iron ores through pipelines. So iron ores can be transported through pipelines. This also has multiple effects. One, the cost will come down. The second one, the carbon footprint will also come down. Another thing is technological advancement. We must adopt better technology from developed countries. So for this also foreign investment and foreign technology is required, and that is why we promote FDI more than FII. So in FDI, it is not only the capital that comes into the economy, but also infrastructure, also technology of the country, etc. So FDI or investment in FDI will increase the technological advancement of the steel industry in India, along with providing capital for the industry. So the more focus must be given to FDI rather than the FII. As we said in the beginning, the global demand for steel is increasing and the supply is decreasing. India is actually trying to build the supply demand gap. If we properly utilize the resources that we have, mainly the manpower, we know that India is blessed with demographic dividend, and if India properly utilizes this demographic dividend and whatever resources we have now, there is no doubt that India can become the second largest producer of steel by the year 2030 as targeted by our government. Increasing production of steel will not only contribute to the employment sector or the growth of employment rate in the country, but it will also increase the GDP of our country by providing more output, and it will also boost the Make in India initiative of the government.